Hello and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask what moves us, or more accurately, what's going to move us in future.
With the Rail Innovation Group's Johannah Deb and Liam Henderson, we look at debates, themes and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Well, welcome to the Rail Innovation Group podcast with me, Deb Carson, and Liam and Johannah.
Hi everyone.
Hello. How are we this week?
Liam did a podcast or did an interview yesterday, as far as I understand. So we're going to I think you guys are going to talk a bit about that. I haven't listened to that yet. So, and then we're going to kind of reflect on what came out of that interview, and also obviously we can't not talk about the fact that we now have another Prime Minister. So
true too. I think that.
Yeah, sorry, go on then.
No, I was going to say I think that's true. So, what are your thoughts on that?
What, on the new PM?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what can I say? It's been a roller coaster. I think that it does feel a bit like there is a bit more experience now in government. Well, aside from the fact that obviously I suppose Rishi Sunak's not that experienced a politician, but you know, you sort of feel that he did a reasonably good job during the pandemic and everything, and sort of understands the public finances. So you sort of feel that at least we're not being held hostage to people that are, you know, sort of taking enormous risks, basically, like Liz trusted, which obviously didn't pay off and has meant that now we're all going to be paying higher mortgages, etc. So yeah, it feels like there is some stability, but I mean there are still a lot of questions, I have to say, in terms of party unity, which I think there might be a little bit of a hiatus where everyone feels a bit of relief, but then I think, yeah, it remains to be seen whether there is any kind of any real unity that gives us any kind of stability, because there are so many things now that the government need to start doing business on. Yeah. So that's where we need to get to, isn't it?
I agree. Johannah, I have a question. You're obviously based in Scotland, so is there any? For us, the politics is dominating for basically the last 2 weeks. No one's done anything except watch BBC News or Sky News or whichever news agent you have. In Scotland, is it diluted a bit by the fact that you have two tiers of government?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the questions are always different, and I think just like everybody else in the rest of the UK, everybody's worried about the cost of living, everybody's worried about the uncertainty that all of this causes, what it's doing to our mortgage payments, what it's doing to our services. And I think, just to add an extra layer onto that, there was I only caught a little bit of it on the news this morning. I didn't really look into it, but there was a piece that's just been published by the Scottish government, which I think was would have landed on Prime Minister Sunak's desk this morning, which was about the state of infrastructure and services in Scotland, and it was what pricked my ears up about it, because I was only sort of like half listening to the piece on the radio, was that they were mentioning about the Stonehaven derailment last year, and they were and other infrastructure issues that are going on in Scotland, which are also directly related to climate change as well. And I know that I was speaking to somebody last year, just after the derailment, when they said that you can expect, probably because of climate change, for more of that those types of accidents to happen in Scotland, because of more rain, rain falling, the state of the earthworks and that. So I think I think that's quite important, as we discuss further about stability and what that means actually on the things that just aren't getting done, because we're all just excited by the Westminster psychodrama. You know, it's like, you know, season 4 or however many seasons we've had, sort of, you know, since the, you know, since we left, you know, the EU, or whatever you want to call year 0 in all of this drama that's been going on in our lives, and that. So I don't think it's that different. I think everyone has the same concerns, but there's a different, it's more nuanced, isn't it? Just like, you know, if you were in Wales or if you're in Northern Ireland with a devolved administration, is that every time something happens in Westminster that creates more uncertainty, the call goes out greater for the vote for independence. And I don't have a feeling whether, you know, whether people want more independence and that, but I think everybody just wants all of this to stop and for us all to get on our lives and things to go back to the way they used to be.
Sadly, days might have passed.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do notice sort of like, you know, the nationalists are out on Saturdays campaigning and that, so it is ramping up. And of course we're waiting for the ruling on whether the SNP Scottish government can go ahead with a referendum without the permission of the UK government. But I think from a positive point of view, at least Rishi Sunak did ring all the devolved administration's leaders and first ministers, so I think that is positive.
That's a step forward from Liz Truss, who refused to speak to them.
And I think, as you say, it feels as if, you know, sort of like, you know, the grown-ups are back in charge. You know, it's not about the political rhetoric anymore. It's about actually recognizing that we all need to get along to get over this period.
Yeah,
and we have to talk to each other.
Yeah, I think on that he will be more. Well, he'll certainly be more the tone of his tone is much more sort of respectful, I suppose, and all of that kind of thing, isn't it? So, I mean, I guess my only worry, you know, with my HS2 rail hat on is, you know, basically Rishi Sunak is like a money man, isn't he? And that's kind of, I was listening to that. I don't know if any of you listen to that Alistair Campbell's podcast that he does with oh gosh,
Rory Stewart.
Yes.
Another podcast.
Yes, sorry, I'm promoting another podcast, but it is quite an interesting.
Alistair Campbell would be proud of you because he likes promoting his podcast.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, whatever. I can't be bothered playing all these games about what you do and don't promote. I think it's interesting to listen to them, the pair of them, because they've got fairly opposing views politically, but they have some really sort of really good insight into just, I don't know, just kind of deep politics, I suppose, and what's happened over the last sort of, it's quite long, you know, obviously both quite long-standing insights as well. But, you know, Alistair Campbell made a really good point on one of the ones that I watched. And I mean, obviously, Alistair Campbell is, you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I totally get that. But, you know, he has been in the thick of it, ha ha. So, you know, he was saying, you know, it takes somebody quite special to actually be a prime minister. You can be really, really good at, you know, whatever in government, in, you know, in various ministerial roles and what have you. But actually, there's very few people actually can make a good job of PM, because it's, you know, it's a massive job, you know. And I did think, yes, we have got a bit of stability back, but, you know, when Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor, he oversaw the scrapping of HS2's eastern leg, you know, and that was a step back, as far as a lot of people considered a step back from sort of previous infrastructure spending commitments. You know, they did fund, he delivered Crossrail, but obviously all of that was before the state of the public, as in, I mean, he obviously didn't deliver it, but he, you know, signed off the final amount of money, essentially, that meant that Crossrail was finished. But obviously that was all before the kind of complete carnage of the last few years. And, you know, I think that, you know, we're seeing now that we've got like evidence on sort of what Brexit is bringing to the table in terms of our economic non-growth.
How much of that decision on HS2 though do you think was down to, shall we call it the Treasury orthodoxy about delivering value for money, or more about Operation Save Big Dog? in the sense that backroom deals were done in order to shore up Boris Johnson's position because he was in a position of weakness at the time.
So then why would you cancel what he wanted to do?
Well, it
Boris
was because
Johnson
of
was also-
backbenchers, securing support of backbenchers.
Well, I see that as I think at the time that was seen much more as the Chancellor having his way on the money, because I think we all know as much as you can criticise Boris Johnson for all sorts of things, he was actually a big supporter of big infrastructure, big projects, and all the rest of it, and was a big supporter of HS2. So I mean, I think many in the industry saw the Chancellor's hands on that rather than anyone else's. I mean, he's done the same for NPR, as Liz Truss, still everyone seems to be able to say that word it rolls off the tongue, but, actually, I don't know whether anybody gets it really, that's in Westminster, in the ministers in Westminster, actually what that means, but he's always been a long-standing supporter of NPR, but then in the integrated rail plan there was a scaling back of NPR. So that was when when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. So it's hard to get a sense, but I just feel the public finances are obviously in a bad way. Politically, he's got a really difficult line to tread because obviously Liz Truss wanted to kind of play to one part of the Conservative Party and lower taxes, but in reality, as we've seen, that's just not going to cut it at the moment. But he won't want to be raising taxes 18 months before an election, will he? So, he's got a tough gig ahead of him.
Do we get any signals because of the new Transport Secretary, another new Transport Secretary?
So I think, so I said to you I was doing some research in advance because I thought another new transport secretary, and so I thought I'd just look at how many transport secretaries we had, because it was kind of because I also advertising somebody else as well. I saw in the Mobility Matters email that I get daily that he put something along the lines of the 4 billionth transport secretary I've had since I graduated in the 90s or something. But it's not in the last 100 years there's been 58 various guises of transport secretaries, which I thought was quite interesting. So that makes out an average of each transport secretary serves, or Secretary of State for Transport, regardless of whether they're part of the aviation, war ministry or whatever, have served about 18 months. But who do you think was the longest serving transport secretary? You have to go back quite a far bit in history.
I've got no idea.
No, I mean, you'd have heard of him, but it was Marples. Well done.
Yeah.
So obviously the beaching area.
What do I get as my prize?
I don't know. What do you get as your prize? I'll buy you a drink next week.
Perfect.
And what was it? He was, so obviously oversaw the beaching area, and
seatbelts too in cars.
So, and he was also pro car, and I think the current or this week's transport sector is also more supportive of cars and road building than he has been supportive of rail projects. So, and I think this will be interesting for GBR because he is also voted consistently against nationalisation or any form of nationalisation of the transport industry. So will we see a further downgrading of GBR and the transport bill under his tenure than was indicated under the previous incumbent?
No, that's optimistic. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that these are questions that need answering, aren't they? Because because it was already under pressure, because we were just talking about Treasury and the need to get some money back in, and there's a whole list of things that the union issue, which we talked about last week, levelling up is back on the agenda. What does that mean for transport? So does that mean some of the schemes will come back on? Will there be another review?
Well, the current
will Brexit benefits go and transport bill come back?
That might be too. But one of the things I thought was interesting is because there's this criticism of Rishi Sunak because of the speech he did in the summer where in Kent, saying that the previous formula had put all the money up north into poor urban constituencies, whereas he claims that what he meant was that he wanted the money to also be in the south in poor rural constituencies and poor coastal constituencies, which might mean that the south of England actually is allowed to apply for funding again.
Yes, that was mentioned. We had a levelling up event in Leeds last week, and that was, someone did mention that.
So what were the themes that came up at your event last week then?
We talked, the themes were, well, partly around how you make the case for infrastructure and how you actually sort of bring in the kind of needs of communities into the sort of green book, you know, sort of methodologies and what have you, because even with the new reform, even with the reforms to that, I think there was, I mean, we had a sort of an economist from Arup on the panel, and she said, you know, it's still very difficult to make, you know, to make the case for infrastructure in areas where there's, for example, low productivity and that kind of thing. I mean, we had an interesting discussion about what levelling up means, and I suppose in some ways that did play to what Rishi Sunak was talking about when he talked about, I mean, everyone takes the mickey out of it because he talks about Tunbridge Wells, which is obviously one of the poshest parts of Kent, but I mean, there are lots of very, very deprived areas in the southeast, as there are in the southwest, you know, so it is it's an interesting, but it's a, you know, again, you've got that kind of that then becomes difficult politically, doesn't it, to kind of.
But I guess that's the thing, isn't it, because nobody has truly defined what levelling up means, and of course levelling up can mean different things according to what you're talking about. Sorry to interrupt. For the benefit of our listeners, what are we talking about? What event?
Oh, sorry, we had the High Speed Rail Group had an event in Leeds called specifically on levelling up. So we had a panel. We had Henry Morrison from NPR, and don't ask me to reel off all the panelists. We had Josie from Arup.
But what was the topic of conversation? Just levelling up, or?
Yeah, it was how to sort of how transport is a kind of key factor in levelling up, or needs to be a key part of the levelling up narrative, really. So, you know, it's about why transport, you know, proper, integrated, sustainable transport is an essential part of the levelling up story, so that, you know, people can, you know, move around effectively, get to areas of employment, you know, encourage investment, which again sort of, you know, raises productivity in areas, that kind of thing. So it was that kind of debate. It was sorry, I should have said it was transport. It was transport related. I was just looking at how Mark Harper voted on transport, actually. Or, yeah, as you said, voted against publicly owned railway, consistently voted against slowing the rise in rail fares, generally voted for lower taxes on fuel for motor vehicles, almost always voted against greater public control of bus services, almost always voted for higher taxes on plane tickets. It's perhaps his saving grace. So yeah, not particularly encouraging, I suppose.
Although, I mean, like going back to the whole levelling up, and I was going to sort of like, say about transport, and that is, I mean, like, I guess really, I mean, like, particularly for levelling up, is that one of the big elements that Mark Harper needs to sort out is the whole mess that transport is in at the moment in delivering a basic service. And I think it's interesting about, you know, that he's in favour of, you know, higher aviation taxes, because I speak from, you know, Scotland, because I hadn't really thought about it until recently, because I thought I was just kind of thinking about cost of living crisis. But I have taken, I'm going to swear, flying down to London more than I take the train.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really, because I obviously I have a direct train from Pitlochry, but it is pretty much impossible to get cheap advance tickets from either Pitlochry or Edinburgh at the moment on the line. And of course, what's causing it is it's you know, I mean, like, it's just demand management, because there are hardly any services, reliable services on the West Coast because of what's going on the West Coast. The fares have been pushed up on the East Coast. So you can buy just pretty much standard tickets. You can't get advanced tickets anymore, or it's difficult to get them unless you know that that in 3 months' time you need to do a journey or whatever. But even then, they're not releasing the tickets far in advance. So whilst it's a related problem that we're all hearing about, it's also impacting on the rest of the network, and also increasing to the overall cost of living of everybody, and prices for everybody else. So it's really, for the people of that live on the West Coast, it's important that that is resolved for them so that they can get on with their lives, and that it's also important for the rest of the network as well, because it's impacting on the rest of the network too.
Well, I think also it just talks to, the thing is with rail and infrastructure generally, but obviously rail, when I'm talking about high speed rail, which is, there's loads of big infrastructure in that, is that they, these things are really long term. So, it's like that, the taking off the Golden Link from HS2, that's had an impact on connectivity and journey times to Scotland, hasn't it? So whether that was considered, I mean, we don't want to go into the politics of why that, all the hoo-ha around why.
What did the Peter Hendy report say about it?
What did what, sorry?
The Peter Hendy report into connectivity say about it?
I can't remember. I think they just said, well, I'm talking about what industry said about it, really, which was that they were really unhappy with, because the trouble is, in that connectivity review, he did say that it might not be the best way to get high-speed trains to Scotland, I think, Hendy said. But, the thing is, if you keep scrapping bits of a project and then not coming up with a better alternative, it basically leaves the industry that's supposed to be building this stuff in a kind of hiatus of not knowing, what's going to happen next. And it's just really unhelpful, isn't it? And I mean, it's unhelpful for the economy, because obviously that's what industry are telling the government, is we need a pipeline of work, all the rest of it, because without that, we're going to end up losing skills overseas. I mean, the skills situation here is already, I think, becoming quite difficult, from what I hear from sort of industry colleagues. So, without all of that certainty, it does have a knock-on effect. So, and also, all of those discussions that we've been having with the Scottish government for the last, 10 years about improving that journey time and making it comparable with rail. Again, it's kind of put off. It's like kicking the can down the road, isn't it?
Yes.
If Peter Hendy's saying it's not the best way to get high-speed trains to Scotland, well, fine, but then what is?
I was going to ask, what is the best way to get high-speed trains to Scotland?
Build it.
Right.
But you see, that's the kind of the point that I was making, is that because and I started off at the beginning of this talking about the environment and infrastructure. All infrastructure is important, regardless of what it is. But we had started off at the beginning of this year where a new hierarchy into the highway code was published, where pedestrians and cyclists were put at the top, and that. But you need a hierarchy of all transport, and we should all be using the right transport to have the right journey. And it is the job of government to provide that infrastructure, because I hate myself for flying. I really do hate myself, because I've always been somebody who loves to travel by train. But it's becoming less convenient, it's becoming more expensive when you compare it to other options available. And it is absolutely ridiculous that we do not have, 15 years after the opening of our first high-speed route, more high-speed routes in this country, because we're small, we're like Japan. We should be more like Japan. In the fact that we should be doing away with any domestic air travel and having high-speed routes with local routes connecting into.
We don't have to look as far as Japan, do we, Johannah? I mean, no. France. Look at what France is doing. I mean, France has banned domestic flights. So where there is, where you can do that comparably by rail, and they're investing massively. They've got they're fast to get things through planning. I do, of course, understand that France is a very different country in terms of size and, you know, geographical kind of.
But as you say, it's
context.
political uncertainty all the time, rather than just making the decision and getting on with it. Yeah, rather than keep revisiting cases and that, because as we all know, business, transport business cases, they never accurately predict. So we should never let actually the perfect getting in the way of it being just good enough, because we know the benefits will come.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, to be honest, I think that's one of the criticisms, I suppose, that you could level at HS2 in a way. Not that I don't want to be critical of HS2, but you know, that scheme was, to some extent, some might say, there was a lot of kind of vanity in there to do with, like, we must have the biggest trains, the longest track, the highest speed.
Trains,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's, which to me, and obviously this is just between us, this isn't going anywhere else, is it? That's that speaks to sort of like, boys with train sets, do you know what I mean? Because actually you've got to be pragmatic about some of this stuff. And Green Gauge, for example, has done some interesting work about what might be a good option for the eastern leg, which isn't what was the original proposal for the eastern leg. It's actually about much more pragmatically connecting up the cities that need to be connected up with a mixture of high speed and traditional lines, because you don't have to just sweep through and that's not always the best option, but it's about having that pragmatic view, and also bearing in mind the timescales, and I will say that actually Henry Morrison was very dismissive of the Green Gauge report at the Levelling Up event. No, it was not his cup of tea. He actually mentioned it in his panel speech and said it was a load of rubbish. But anyway, I'm just using it as an example because actually what you need to do is bring those benefits along quicker for people. I think everyone always forgets that trains are actually for passengers.
Yeah. Well, I think
we just want to get on them. We don't care about all of that. I mean, obviously we do, because we all work in the industry, but generally people just want to get to a station and get on a train and get to somewhere as easy as they can. And actually it is much easier to when the railway network is working well, it is so much easier to get anywhere. I mean, I'm a football fan, right? So we've been kind of slightly scuppered by a combination of strikes and what have you for getting to games. And I speak to many football fans, and they all love the trains. You know what I mean? When nobody wants to try and drive to a game, get stuck in traffic, uncertainty about how to get somewhere. People want reliable trains, and then they'd use them. But the worry is that the trains, it feels like the railway network is becoming less and less relevant to people because it's not performing as it should for a number of reasons.
We could do a whole podcast on this, couldn't we?
We could.
And I think we should. But but thinking about the interview you did yesterday, Liam, with one of our members, obviously this uncertainty is impacting on our members. Yes,
I would say so. And it's a similar conversation you had. Sorry, we'll play the interview in a second, but it's a similar conversation to one we had a few weeks ago where we talked about it becoming harder and harder for small companies to continue to engage with the rail sector because the uncertainty and the lack of decision-making and approval for lengthier contracts is, I mean, you can't run a small business based on proof of concepts and based on trials. So that was an interesting conversation. And then it was about, is the UK the best place to be investing in your time at the minute? Great British Rail, GB. So,
well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just transport, it's everyone that's suffering, isn't it? We're just not a good bet at the moment.
Yes. So should we play that interview?
Yes, I think we should.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am very well. Where are you today?
I am at home, North Nottinghamshire, sat in my office, and it's too warm.
What was your home office before it was your office?
It was a mud piece of hole in the ground. We had it built during the beginning of the pandemic. We're having some work done on the house, so we thought we'll have a little office built in the garden, which was a nice idea, but it gets very, very warm in here. So.
Right. I'm just going to have an image of you sitting in a mud hole in the.
No, it's actually quite nice now. I can't. It's still not finished. That's another problem, but probably not meant to mention that on this podcast. Yeah.
Right. So we are speaking today about Nomad Digital. So here's your opportunity. Would you like to introduce your name, your full name, and your company?
Yep, I'm Mike Butler, Head of Innovation at Nomad Digital, which is part of Alstom Group. But Nomad Digital provides IP-based solutions for the transportation sector, from rail, trams, buses, etc. So we put intelligence onto vehicles so you can extract more value and extract more information from your rolling stock, from your bus, whatever. So we are very much focused on connectivity, but with the also being able to actually use what we have as a processing platform to host SMEs applications or solutions, our own solutions, so passenger information systems, remote condition monitoring, etc., etc. So we do anything on board to try and extract value to hopefully improve passenger experience, operational efficiency, and stuff like that.
Right. Comprehensive then.
Very much so. Very much so. Yes. So obviously following the emerging market. What's that? Sorry.
I said a solution for all customers.
Very much so. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we've customers who are doing infrastructure monitoring, all the way to ones who are just off, who just run buses for getting people from A to B. So
great.
Yes.
And they are based in, but they're based in Newcastle, aren't they?
That is right. Yeah. Yeah.
So are you remote, or do you work back and forth?
Remote mainly, go to Newcastle occasionally, but I have to say, as I came back to Nomad coming up to 2 years ago in the middle of the lockdown, I've not been very many times, but I'm quite used to that work remote in my last 2 jobs previously. So since leaving Network Rail, I've not really been in an office, which people think is a good idea. So.
All right then. And when you do go to Newcastle, are you training or driving?
Train.
Okay. Good answer. Right answer. So we're doing this interview today because Nomad Digital is a member of the Innovation Group. So it's really to get you to know you a bit better. So we did discuss some potential questions, of which I'm going to pick the first one, which is, why did you choose to engage with us?
Because I think it was something we were lacking. We saw the membership of Rail Innovation Group and saw the sort of representation and the companies you were engaged with, and we are a bit hit and miss when it comes to engagement with SMEs, with other companies, and I thought it was a brilliant forum for us to actually get involved with and meet new companies, hopefully collaborate with, learn some new things, and actually be a bit more visible in this side of the rail market. I think we've always been innovative, but we've not been very good at publicizing it, which right. I think the group gives us the opportunity to do that, hopefully. So.
Okay, so we did see you at Innotrans with your very big, impressive stage, so that was good. But how have you? So have you found this helps your engagement, or
into Innotrans?
Well, being a member, going to Innotrans, doing those things. So you said you weren't, weren't brilliant at engagement. So I'm asking, have you developed that?
No, I think there's been a couple of there's been some engagement with some of the members, which has been on the back of joining in the weekly calls, which has been nice. But actually, some of the publicity and the exposure you've given us has been very good for us in terms of social media. Instead of having the traditional LinkedIn post from Nomad, you've actually retweeted, you've linked into some of the work you're doing. So yeah, invaluable, because it also puts us into a new way of exposing ourselves. Excuse the term.
Okay, well, we'll take credit for all of that. That's good. Loving these answers. So, as a more let's say sizable company, you're obviously engaging through the group with much newer, smaller companies, startups. So do you find that you're able to maintain the pace of innovation as the smaller companies? I'm going to say, basically, once you get bigger, how do you keep innovating?
I think That's the difficulty. The bigger you are, the harder it is to change, stay agile, be responsive to the market. So actually engaging with the SME groups help us do that. They give us exposure, give us capabilities that we can not exploit but partner with to offer new things to our customer base and new customers. In terms of Nomad, yes, we've had to start looking at things differently. We've got to look at how we can add value to the install base we already have, but how we extract more value from what is potentially classed as a passive sensor on board of a train. So this has been difficult because the market is continually changing. I think we'll discuss it a bit, that sometimes it doesn't move. It has wonderful ideas, but that never implements them, which can be frustrating for some companies. But we've continually got to evolve and look at where the market potentially is going to meet customer needs.
Right.
And I would say there's been in the traditional market of Nomad, which was passenger Wi-Fi from, when was it, 20 years ago. That was probably an easier ask because it was a new technology coming onto rail. So people wanted to have connectivity to and from the train. It was addressed to an extent, limitations on the mobile coverage. But after that, what else can you do? And actually what we're introducing onboard vehicles is a very powerful processing unit. We're introducing IP networks. We're connecting sensors which were previously not connected. And so we now need to look at what can we do with those sensors on board the train to extract some more value, to give the operators, the passengers, more data, which is actually going to be of benefit to them rather than just be a hindrance.
Right. So you're actively developing new ways to use your products rather than new products.
I think it's a mixture of both. I think looking at how, so if we look at how a CCU, a communication control unit on board of a train, which is the sort of central hub for connectivity on board, actually that's capable of doing a hell of a lot more. So it's almost like a data center. So we can look at what else we can use with that, but then we can introduce new products onto the train that can utilize that central processing unit to be the hub, the intelligence, the processor, to start doing more and more on board a vehicle, not necessarily also a train. It can be a tram, it can be a bus as well. So
okay. And then I'm assuming that those units can also go on sort of any,
if it moves, you can go on it.
Anything that moves. Okay. And is that your background?
My background was background was been infrastructure monitoring. So I was always putting systems onto trains to try and extract data, or extract information to look at the condition of certain assets. So for example, I did a project on GSMR monitoring. I did video analytics systems, the original video systems on board Network Rail's yellow trains. It was to try and put things onto a train to try and get a better viewpoint of how the asset was evolving or degrading over time. And so my background has always been putting systems onto trains or infrastructure to collect condition data.
Right. Okay. So, okay, right. So, and also then I guess the question is, does your innovation stem from competition or stem from sort of good thoughts?
It's a good question. I think it's a mixture of both. You have to innovate to stay ahead of your competitors, but you also have to come to your customer base with new ideas. They don't want to be coming to you telling you what their problems are. You need to be looking at where the market's going, where the problems potentially are, and going to your customer and saying, we think we can improve your efficiency by doing X. So I think it's a mixture of both. You've got to make sure you're ahead of your competitors, but you've also got to actually come up with your own ideas, because you can't have everyone coming up with the same things.
Right. Okay. I have a question that I'm just going to bank for now, which is about where the market is going. But given you seem to know how to develop it quite well, then, is for the smaller companies, would you suggest that they follow the same process then, as in sort of have one key thing that you can build on? Or is it a case of find the gaps?
I think there's two ways to look at it. There are gaps all over the market, but there's actually new ways to do existing things. So I look at a lot of SMEs trying to get into the rail market, and they get very, very, very frustrated about the slow pace of things, or lots and lots of trials, lots of innovation money, but the actual market never emerges. So they've got to. I'm trying to think of the best way of saying it. They've got to sort of not spread themselves too thinly and look at where they want to be, but don't become too dependent on one customer, because the politics can get in the way. People can change, and next thing you know, they've got an idea that gets blocked and they go nowhere, and they just drop out the market. So they've got to be very specific on what they're trying to achieve, but also don't get frustrated by rail.
Right. Have you ever got frustrated by rail yourself?
Oh, very endlessly. 22 years of frustration, and it's luckily I've worked for bigger companies, so there's probably a bit more tolerance to failure. But if you're an SME with limited budgets, there's only so much you can tolerate before you think enough's enough. I've got to go and focus on another market.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would you say is a top tip?
Don't be scared to collaborate, because actually there's a lot of knowledge base. There's a knowledge base out there that can help you with lessons learned. There's the likes of yourselves who have got a lot of experience in the rail market. There's a lot of big groups like ourselves are happy to work with SMEs and help guide them and help put even business plans together to help them develop a product. We can even help with the whole development of a product, but don't be scared to collaborate, because the vast majority of companies are there to help you.
So going back to the market aspect is keeping up with the market and keeping up with the sector. Obviously, we've had the news recently that GB, Great British Rails, is paused / may or may not be happening. We don't know. We have a new transport secretary yesterday. So as the market is changing / not changing / we don't really know what's happening. Do you see similar, well, I'm guessing that's lobbing so much uncertainty in it, but do you think that is happening elsewhere, or is it a particular rail problem?
I think the pandemic's created uncertainty everywhere. There's budgets have been slashed. There's people aren't willing to invest because they don't know whether the passenger numbers are going to come back in a short period of time. So I think it's a problem which exists not just in rail, on bus, on all public transport, and not just in the UK. Everywhere globally, the market has suffered in the last 2 years. I think UK, and I will give the likes of Network Rail some credit. Network Rail has always been, I think, ahead of other countries when it comes to looking at ways to make the railway safer and more efficient. But like most companies which are tied to the government, they can be quite bureaucratic and slow moving. So I think the GB Rail thing is going to cause more uncertainty, and in the short term, is this going to stop? I think it's going to stop investment yet again, or it's going to pause investment for a longer period of time. And I don't think I thought GB Rail at least started to devolve the whole structure more of Network Rail back into the routes, the responsibility onto the Roscos to invest, into the operators to look at new ways and innovative ways to manage their operations. And I think now they're in limbo yet again. So, but that's going to happen. I think that's happening elsewhere as well.
Yes. So do you work internationally?
Yes, we do. So Nomads, we've got customers in France, SNCF, major one. We've got customers in California, CCJPA, Via Rail, Metrolinx in Canada, NSB. Globally, in Australia, we've got remote condition monitoring systems out there, as well as being passenger Wi-Fi and other systems. So yeah, we're a global company, and obviously we also tie into the Alstom supply chain as well, which gives us even greater exposure with new rolling stock. Right.
So where would you say the bright spots are? Not that we're encouraging innovators from the UK to go abroad, but where are they?
I've got to say, I think the US is a massive market. It's untapped. Biden's given, I think, is it over $1 trillion for investment into public transport in roundabout ways. I think their desire to try and get people out of the car is now serious, rather than the Donald Trump years where they were there's nothing wrong with the car. I think America is an untapped, North America is an untapped market. I think there's massive potential in the metros, on the buses within some of these major cities, and you've also got the major operators like Amtrak. But actually, you look at what's out there in the US, road, rail, light rail, whatever. I think a very, very new market or untapped market to actually start putting very good ideas that have been developed elsewhere and new ways of doing things, and hopefully entice the Americans out of their cars.
Oh, yes.
Which would be nice.
Progress,
eventually, but yeah.
So bringing it back to home then is, if you're based, so you do have these international opportunities and markets, but then you're based in Newcastle, and I was wondering, is being based up there, does that, I say up there, I'm in London, does that, South London, not a podcaster from North London, does that help or hinder national and international growth and development?
I've got to say, we have the majority of people are up in the northeast, but we do have offices in Belgium, development centres in Belgium and in Germany. We do bits elsewhere as well, but I would say on the whole, no. Maybe in the very early days, it used to be a hindrance in terms of keeping people in the northeast, but Newcastle party town, so people want to stay there. But also, you've got Newcastle University is part of I think it's one of the key members of UCRIN, but there's a lot of people up there, a lot of competence, and there's a lot of good ideas up in Newcastle. And I think the danger is that the market's very, very buoyant at the moment, so people are looking for what's best for them. So it's probably attracting people is very easy. It's keeping hold of them it's a challenge for all business at the moment. But no, I think nowadays, remote working, end of the pandemic, whatever, people are a lot more, they can work anywhere. So I don't think it's an issue whatsoever.
Okay, cool. And so the working style that you have is very much flexible then, I guess.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, and it's got to be, and of course, because we're trying to support different time zones as well, you've got to be. So I think gone are the days where you're having to force the whole workforce into sit in an office and look at each other longingly. Don't do that anymore.
But they come for pub nights, do they?
Well, yeah, pub nights are good. Yeah. I'm too old for all that now. So.
What? Well, you haven't got your camera on, so I can't judge. But
you saw me in Berlin. I'm very grey. I went grey at 18, so there we are.
I actually didn't manage to see you very much in Berlin because you had so many people you were talking to. So there was a queue of people trying to talk to you every time I went past.
Man of the people, you see. So
people person.
People person. That's one thing my wife wouldn't say I am, but that's another.
Great. Thanks for your time, Mike, and we will speak to you soon. There we have it, Mike Butler from Nomad Digital. I thought there were a number of things that were interesting to me in that. The opportunities, particularly in North America, which I wasn't expecting because it's not the most dynamic. You don't think of it as the most dynamic rail market, but apparently it is. So that's good. Helpful hints for other members.
Yeah, there's quite a lot going on there's quite a lot going on all over the world in rail. I think rail is exciting, but there is a lot of projects going on in North America, particularly Canada. And of course, yesterday, Arup won the contract to build to design 4 new stations for the California high speed. And I think after many years, that's progressing ahead. So I think, like everywhere, they're going to be looking for new innovations and technology. So that's great news.
I've got a feeling that Amtrak came to visit HS2 recently.
That's interesting.
It's whilst it's a good news story, if you go back to what we were talking about before the interview, was the skills gap it's not going to help if we start losing our skilled designers, operators to international projects.
It's a huge problem for the industry. I think it's just really, I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to really, really get on top of. And I think, I think that's what is worrying a lot of people, because we're being seen as generally less investable as a country because let's be honest, no one can argue with the fact that we must appear like a complete shambles over the last sort of 6 months. So that doesn't help. Then obviously, if you're getting into the detail, you know, there's lots of programs that have been either paused or, you know, whatever, and it just makes for that really uncertain climate, that which is obviously why the Department for Transport, having recognised this, of now advertising the amazing new role of head of uncertainty, which come on now, someone must be wanting to apply for that. What a job. What do you do? I'm the head of uncertainty. What does that involve? I'm not sure. Yeah,
you can make it up though if you're uncertain, can't you?
Shouldn't laugh, honestly. I was very unprofessional to laugh at that, but you can't, I mean, it is quite funny.
So
Yes.
a couple of other things to note is again, in terms of top tips for other members, it's quite interesting. It's the same thing we've heard, similar themes we heard before, which is don't be afraid to collaborate, and well, the other one is don't become dependent on one customer. So you might work with a train operating company or somebody else for a year to come up with a product, but then there's no guarantee that that product's going onto their system in the current environment. So you sort of have to be planning for the whole landscape of industry, and at some point you might end up with a customer for an investment or abroad.
Yes. Indeed.
Well, I think that is the thing, isn't it? As we become less investable, is I don't think, you know, if you're talking about, you know, some of the expertise, because we do have a lot of expertise and skills, but that is moving abroad because of the fact that there are so many projects internationally. You know, so maybe that was what was meant by Global Britain.
But it was. Case in point is both you and I are doing consulting for foreign projects at the moment.
And I mean, and France Macron has just committed to I think it's 3 new high-speed lines in the next decade. So that's impressive when you think it's taken us 10 years to practically get HS2 through the planning process.
Well, of course, the serious point in all of that is that HS2 should have been opening 2 years this January.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the original plan. Soft launch January 2025.
Yeah.
Running between Old Oak Common and Birmingham.
When do the soft launch is going to be now?
In the 2030, isn't it now?
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
And it's all been caused by constant reviews into the value for money case. Yeah, and I think, I don't know what the additional cost has been of those reviews, but I know that somebody that I spoke to recently about the House of Commons, or the House of Parliament, I should say, not Commons, refurbishment, for every day that is delayed, that is costing the UK taxpayer £1 million.
Yeah. You can add that to the £5 million a day it's costing to keep people that have just coming over in small boats in hotels, because that's costing £5 million a day. So there are.
But of course, the answer to that is to send them to Rwanda
and other places, because Rishi Sunak he is fully supportive of the Rwanda policy, and he actually wants to actively look for other partners to send people to.
So whilst this might seem relevant to transport, it is taking funding away on what could be used to spend on infrastructure.
Oh,
yes, exactly. Build back better, as the government
it's a distraction from what we need to be doing as a country.
Yeah, it is. But again, it's one of those politically sort of difficult, toxic things that, you know, is hard to resolve, and not helped obviously by Brexit and, you know, challenges of relationships with our French friends.
Right.
So
just before we sign off, we have a new Transport Secretary. We have a new, I think it's now called an autumn statement, on November 7th or 17th. So
don't have an HS2 minister.
No. What are you hoping for in the announcement on the 17th? Or what are you dreading? Deb?
Well, bearing in mind my previous, lots of my previous work was done in local government, and just generally my sort of, with my equality hat on, I'm dreading a return to any kind of austerity.
Okay. And hoping for?
Well, I'm hoping for some sort of pragmatism. What I'm really hoping for is that somebody gets behind, well, this is going to sound political because obviously this is something that the Labour Party have actually talked about, but I think we need to really, really commit properly to our, to tackling climate change. And that is very, very relevant to transport, because transport is the most polluting bit of the country. So we need to commit to encouraging people back onto non-polluting forms of transport, and that is not, can I say again, not solved by people just going out and buying electric cars. That is not going to solve the problem.
Right.
It isn't actually that sustainable to be driving around in an electric car.
Great. Deb, Johannah.
So I would agree with both of what Deb said, Alvin. Like, I think I fear for another round of austerity, not just for people that can little afford it, but also in terms of what that means in terms of investment for our country. Because, and I hope for a pro-rail Secretary of State, and that there will be some good negotiations between the Department for Transport and Treasury for the autumn statement that will see continued commitment to HS2 and maybe putting the legs back on. The go ahead for East-West Rail, because I think that is also vital and also part of levelling up and meeting our climate goals. And controversially, because I'm the same as Deb's, I don't think electric vehicles or hydrogen or any of that answer. I think it is all more public transport. So I'd actually like to see any new investment in roads stopped and we only commit to maintaining.
Okay.
What do you think, Liam? What would you like to see?
I think I would like to see more of an understanding that investment in small-scale public transport schemes and active travel schemes does have economic return. If you put on regular, reliable bus services from villages to towns, people can go and have opportunities and jobs and create wealth that way.
Yes.
And
perhaps what we need, this is very radical, perhaps what we need is a national transport strategy.
Yeah, what?
Have we not said that before?
Surely not. I mean, that is radical, man.
Right. I love you and leave you.
Good chat.
Good to chat, guys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.